to Stanford. You too. This is an amazing spread. But I have to leave at 5 o'clock, and I just saw that the meeting's at 5:30, so I'm going to sit over on the backside. His only goes to 5.
His goes to 5.
Okay, and then the concluding remarks are at 5:30?
Well, I'll actually do the remarks after.
Okay. So when you see me leave, don't think I was there. I'm going to go explain to him too. Okay, good. So I'm going to sit over there. Okay,
right.
Thank you again for that. You were so wonderful. I love my beautiful podcast. Thank you.
Please come in and take a seat. Everybody feel free to come forward and find some place to sit down. I think people will be wandering in for a couple more minutes, but I think I will go ahead and start so that we leave enough time for the lecture that Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education Harry Elam is going to be delivering today. So good afternoon. I'm Michelle Marincovich, the Associate Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education and the Director of the Center for Teaching and Learning. And it's my distinct privilege to launch this afternoon's 35th anniversary celebration. We are just so grateful to all of you for being here, and also to our three speakers for today. Aisha Bagchi, whom I will be introducing soon, and who is the winner of the Student Speech Contest. Then President Hennessy has come and will be introducing the 100th speaker in our award-winning Teachers on Teaching lecture series. And then Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education, Harry J. Elam Jr. will deliver the 100th lecture that we're all looking forward to. But there's a more extended debt of gratitude that I would like to acknowledge today to those people at Stanford and elsewhere who have helped so much in bringing CTL to this 35th year landmark. And I hope you don't mind if I take a few minutes to make those acknowledgments. And first of all, I would like to thank the faculty at Stanford for making this the first research university to unequivocally demonstrate that it's not a matter of teaching or research, but as Emeritus Professor Stig Hagstrom of Materials Science and Engineering puts it, a matter of teaching and research. And you did that. Our teaching award-winning faculty, many of whom are here today and have the red ribbons, are particular examples of the power of deeply considered and thoughtful pedagogical decision-making. And they are responsible for experiences for our students in the classroom that we will hear from Aisha are often transforming. And then I would like to thank the presidents of Stanford since our founding in 1975, including Richard Lyman, Donald Kennedy, who I know is here, but not, there we go, thank you, Don. Gerhard Casper and current President John Hennessy for both supporting and enacting the complementarity of teaching and research. And I'd like to thank as well other key administrators at Stanford, vice provosts, deans, and department chairs, and also the current cognizant leader and the most recent cognizant leaders of the Center for Teaching and Learning. And that includes Robert Weisberg of the law school, and I'm not sure if I see Bob here yet, the former VPUE, John Brovman, and of course the current VPUE, Harry Elam. I would also like to thank the former Dean of Undergraduate Studies, James L. Gibbs, Jr., who is the one who thought of having a Center for Teaching and Learning and went after the money for it. We are very honored that he considers us his baby. So, thirdly, I'd like to thank the graduate and undergraduate students of Stanford, the graduate students for taking seriously their roles as TAs and teachers in addition to their role as apprentice scholars. And I want to thank the undergraduate students of Stanford, several of whom are here today, because they are such a joy to teach that our faculty are highly motivated to do well by such students and therefore use a center like ours. Fourthly, very warm thanks goes to donors at Stanford whose interest in teaching and undergraduate education have led them to support many of the innovative programs at Stanford in these areas, especially in the last 15 years. And fifthly, I want to thank the current and former members of the Center for Teaching and Learning, particularly the founding director, Emeritus Professor David Halliburton of English, Modern Thought and Literature, and Comparative Literature, who not only thought that a Center for Teaching and Learning could exist, but that it could thrive, and who also set us on the path of success. I hope that's okay, I'm saying success. Not your part, David, everything since then. Your part was successful. And I also want to thank David and his wonderful wife, Marianne, who is also with us, because they have made me a member not only of their academic family, but of their real family, even though they have 3 wonderful children, one of whom, Jillian, is here. And because they've also let me share some pretty wonderful adventures with them in the south of France. But we won't go into that. And I'd like to give a special nod to the present staff at the Center for Teaching and Learning, particularly Lisa Lampe, Linda Salzer, and Ann Daisy, because they have worked so hard for the last month to make this all go smoothly, and we appreciate that so much. Finally, though, to give you a sense of the conscientiousness and thoroughness of the people at CTL, and I hope you realize that they are available to support your teaching and learning and oral communication efforts, not only today, but throughout the year. I'd like to share a very brief story with you. At a CTL staff meeting, when we were going over the organization of this event, one of the people said, "Do we know where the emergency assembly point is for this room in case there's an earthquake during this event?" Well, within minutes of the end of that staff meeting, Linda Salzer sent all of us an email informing us where the assembly point is for the Bechtel Conference Center. It's right out front. But let me assure you, even though we hope this afternoon is stimulating and lively, we actually hope it stops short of being earth-shaking. So, now what I'd like to do is turn to the rest of our program, and so I would like to introduce Aisha Bagchi, who is the winner of our student speech contest. This fall, the oral communication program invited students to submit a teaching tale, a text of an oral presentation on teaching and teachers and their effect on their undergraduate experience. Aisha's articulate meditation on one professor in particular and on teaching in general distinguished her submission from all the others, although there were strong ones among those as well. She is majoring in philosophy and history with honors in ethics and society, and some of you may have seen her byline on her column, Sense and Nonsense. I was afraid I'd say Sense and Sensibility in the Daily, and she is currently one of 2 students who is serving on the study of undergraduate education at Stanford Task Force. So please join me in welcoming Aisha Bagchi. And please, people, come forward and sit down. There are seats. I think we can have everyone sit down and relax and enjoy themselves.
Please do. Yeah. Okay, hi everyone. I want to start by telling the story of a learning experience I had during spring quarter of my freshman year in a class called Existentialism. Let me say that again, existentialism. To my freshman self, the name alone was intimidating, and the list of authors was even worse. The syllabus said we would read works by Rousseau, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, Camus. If any class seemed up in the clouds, seemed to epitomize my image of a university professor talking about abstract stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with the real world, it was existentialism. But I was very wrong. This was a course that quite literally rocked my world. In every class, our philosophy professor, Lanier Anderson, I saw him, he's there, Lanier Anderson illustrated how what we studied was really about life. Lanier would describe how Sartre's conception of how one acts in good faith might be violated when 20-year-olds misrepresent themselves through something as simple as flirting. He had us read Akhil Bilgrami's article, What is a Muslim?, to think about the relation between existentialism and Muslim identity in the context of absolutist and moderate Islam. The philosophies we read invaded my everyday thinking. Was I in a condition of permanent despair? Could I ever be free? What did it mean to be true to myself and to live an autonomous life? Lanier showed the natural relation between what he taught and the reasons humanity studies it. Our last lecture was a true culmination. After a quarter spent discussing all these big life issues, Lanier talked about a friend of his from his time in college who discovered he had an incurable terminal disease and truly, at our moment in life, was forced to come to terms with the universal human condition of ultimate death and all the questions about identity and meaning that it prompts. My Stanford professor, I could see, was holding back tears as he related how his dear friend had proven truly able to accept all the impossibilities and contradictions embedded in the human condition. That and other lectures have come into dialogue with my life in intellectual and personal ways time and again. 2 years later, Lanier and I were invited to join a university task force, the study of undergraduate education at Stanford. One day last spring, we had a meeting with a few guests from the different schools to talk about the aims of a Stanford education. And after some frustration with what I thought was missing from the conversation, I tried to engage the guests in discussing whether college should be thought of as an isolated intellectual enterprise or whether it needed to encourage students to reflect on ourselves and our world in the context of what we are taught. I thought it was vital to synthesize students' academic, intellectual, and personal development, vital on intellectual, moral, and personal fronts. After our meeting, when everyone had left Sweet Hall, Lanier took a moment to thank me privately for reminding professors, who are now perhaps at some distance from their former college selves, that college remains an intellectually and personally transformative time, that, as he put it, the soul in education is not yet dead. I had never before talked to Lanier about my experience in his class, but in that moment I began to explain how it had awakened me during my freshman year, excited my curiosity, and helped me grasp that hidden secret, that our education, be it focused on existentialism, quantum mechanics, evolutionary biology, or Shakespeare, relates to real life. I mentioned how I had felt when he gave his lecture on Camus' The Plague and discussed conditions of despair, how precious his last lecture remains to me. And I could see, without his saying anything, that emotions welled up inside him. It was a moment of gratitude on my part, and maybe on his too. It was a moment of the kind of sharing that is involved in the richest exchanges between teacher and student. It was a moment that, regardless of how my education prepares me for my future life, had meaning. I am lucky to be able to tell similar stories about so many professors who have played this kind of role in my Stanford education. Rob Breach, who I saw over there, he's somewhere here, Jim Campbell and Tamar Herzog, who show such personal joy in debating me, in, I think, helping a student figure out what she believes and why she should believe it. Sam Weinberg, who, after I came into his office just once, took it upon himself over the next months to provide both his encouragement and his sincere critique, all aimed at helping me become my intellectual and personal best. Raquel Baradas de Freitas, my tutor in legal philosophy at Oxford, who provided both my most rigorous academic experience and in herself a person to emulate. All these teachers understand that the returns from taking teaching seriously, especially with students who aspire to be leaders one day, are enormous. In my own life, my teachers have not only increased my ability to grapple with a complex world, but have also helped me develop motivation and moral awareness. Those things cannot be taught impersonally. They require igniting a student's curiosity, taking her seriously, illustrating how what she studies relates to the world, and helping her see a vision of her future self to work toward. They involve a passionate commitment to helping students become all we can be. When that commitment is there, the returns from dedication to teaching are huge. But the truth is, when I think about the value of teaching, my heart is not in arguments about returns. They are important, but they fail to capture teaching's most central value. That value is not discovered when a university is always caught up in objectives and thinking about the next step and how we are going to get there. It is discovered when we slow down to reflect. In these moments, we begin to remember why a university holds such enchantment in people's imaginations, why the mere idea of a place like Stanford can inspire awe on almost any corner of the globe. The university is a site for something special. The deepest meaning to be found at a university, a place of growing knowledge about the world, is in the sharing that takes place between teacher and student when a teacher helps a student expand her world. The potential returns of such relationships are tremendous, but to find their deepest value, we needn't be looking ahead. It rests in moments like the one I had with Lanier outside Sweet Hall. It is epitomized in the flourishing that takes place when a teacher's intellectual firepower and guidance help foster fruition, and that flourishing is part of a university's soul. Thank you.
Thank you, Asia. Well, now I think we're all reminded why we love teaching Stanford students. It's that kind of engagement. Well, I'm delighted to be here for this 35th anniversary of Stanford Center for Teaching and Learning. The notion that we could have a faculty who would be both great researchers and great teachers goes back to the early days of the university. And in fact, David Starr Jordan himself embraced this. And in writing letters to colleagues, enticing them to come to California, he wrote, "Mr. Stanford wants me to get the best. He wants no ornamental or idle professors." And I think we've never been a place that's had ornamental or idle professors. And if you don't have enough to do, go see the provost and he'll give you some assignments. I think 119 years later, we still celebrate that incredible joy that comes from having colleagues who are both great teachers and great researchers. And for 35 years, this center has really changed what we've been able to do. I think, as Michelle said, David's vision in creating this center and in leading it in the early days was absolutely instrumental. But Michelle thanked so many people. I want to say a special thanks to Michelle, whose incredible leadership of this center has made such a difference. I can tell you not only has my own teaching benefited, but as a department chair and dean, the number of faculty colleagues who have found this center to be a vital resource has been immeasurable. And I think many of our faculty really transformed their teaching with the help from the center. And I think that's really what it's all about in the end. Looking at these posters up here and the roster of faculty and looking around the room, I see many of Stanford's most distinguished teachers, but there are also individuals who've won Nobel Prizes, won Pulitzer Prizes, and even have talk shows on the radio, which tells you, and popular books on the New York Times bestseller list. It's a real indication of the versatility and capability of our faculty. Collectively, these faculty reflect the excellence and range of talents that makes Stanford such a special place, attracts great students, and makes it such a joy to teach them. Through this lecture series, I think the center enables all of us to learn about different techniques that we can use in our own classrooms. So it is an honor and privilege to introduce the center's 100th award-winning teacher on teaching, Harry Elam Jr. Harry's been a distinguished member of the Stanford faculty since 1990. He is a scholar of African American drama and an award winner, having won 6 teaching awards, including the Humanities and Sciences Dean's Distinguished Teaching Award and a Bing Teaching Fellowship for undergraduate education. He's also, by the way, I should point out, a killer director. And if you ever have an opportunity to see a play that Harry is directing, don't miss the chance. His version of Rent that he did on campus, that started, I think he was a physics major, wasn't he, Harry? Started a physics major in the male lead, was incredible. I told him after it was better than the version I had seen in San Francisco, which is a tribute not only to his directing skills, but of course our incredible students. Harry is the Olive H. Palmer Professor in the Humanities and the Robert and Ruth Halpern University Fellow. And this summer, of course, he accepted, as Michelle said, his new role as the Freeman Thornton Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education. I'm delighted he's agreed to take on this challenge. His dedication and vision for undergraduate education are unsurpassed, and our students will be the beneficiaries. 3 years ago, in an interview with the Association for Theater in Higher Education, Harry was asked about his thoughts on balancing research and teaching, and his response was telling. He said, "I love teaching. Classes can be incredibly informative. I'm so grateful to a class that shaped my August Wilson book, for example. They were critical to shaping what I had to say. Class experience can really shape ideas." And when he was asked at the close of the interview if he had any last thoughts, he said, "The only thing I want to say is that I wouldn't want to be doing any other job. To be able not only to practice, but also to be able to think about what it means in society and write about it and teach it, that's good stuff." We are certainly glad that he is not doing any other job at any other university. And I can think of no one better to give the 100th lecture in this series of award-winning teachers. This is actually the second time Harry has been featured in this series. The first time was 15 years ago, when we were all much younger, when he talked about the difficulties and benefits of encouraging diversity and diverse views in the classroom. Today, he'll share his thoughts on Is the Lecture Dead?, the large lecture course in the humanities today. And I have no doubt that he will share some good stuff. Please join me in welcoming Harry.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, President Hennessy, for those remarks. I'm sort of worried now. If I do direct another play, you all expect many things. So luckily, I won't be doing it for a while, being in this job. But I also wanted to say that I'm incredibly honored to be the 100th lecturer in this CTL series and be here on the 35th anniversary. Let me also take this opportunity to honor the award-winning teachers in attendance today. Could you all please stand, the award-winning, probably all the audience in a sense would stand. Could you stand really quickly? Thank you. So please accept our appreciation and thanks for all of your efforts. You have shown through what you do in the classroom that good teaching can work hand in hand, and as the president said, inform great scholarship. That here at Stanford, an emphasis on classroom teaching is not antithetical, but central to the core mission of the university. I would also like to take the opportunity to speak English, to congratulate CTL. Since I've been the VP UE, I have had the opportunity to learn up close and personal what a jewel CTL is at Stanford. Here at CTL, for undergraduate and graduate students, postdocs, and faculty, the focus is on the intersection between learning and teaching and how best to make the classroom encounter all the more meaningful and memorable. Their efforts have changed faculty lives, as the president said, and faculty members discovered that CTL early on, for that matter, or at any point in their career, can be attuned to the kind of magic that can transpire in the student-teacher exchange that Aisha spoke about, and can enhance hundreds, if even thousands of careers over its time. So to CTL, for all you do, a hearty congratulations. I also want to echo what the president said about Michelle, that Michelle isn't truly special. And as you all know, she is the force behind the success and achievement of recent years of CTL. Her passion for teaching and learning, her commitment to Stanford and to Stanford faculty and students have been a major factor in CTL and its growth and evolution over the years. As you all probably know, Michelle is a leader nationally and even internationally in this field. And this recognition has only helped to further her reputation at CTL as a model for others to emulate. So we thank you, Michelle, for your commitment, for your vision, for your leadership. Most particularly to anyone who has worked with Michelle, they know also of her goodwill and kind spirit. Michelle cares, and it shows. So on this day, Michelle, we toast and thank you for all you've done and all you do for CTL and Stanford. So, my talk today is about whether the lecture in humanity is dead and the value of a lecture as a mode of knowledge production in the humanities. To be sure, the irony of this is not lost on me, or I'm sure not on you, right? Here I am giving a lecture on whether the lecture is dead. Now, it's driven in part by my work at the VPUE and the ongoing questions that are being asked by the Seuss study of undergraduate education at Stanford. So part of the rationale for Seuss has been the mantra that the world has changed and students have changed, and we need to think about the methodology for teaching the new learner. We must think how best to educate these millennials, as they've been called, or net generation, as short for internet, right? And about what is required. So one of the factors is how we move to differently approach the subject. How do we teach differently? And I was reminded of a comment by Pat Burkhat in the back. She was talking about a faculty member who said to her, I don't understand. My teaching evaluations are going down, and I'm doing the same thing that I did for 10 years. And that sense there that somehow we have to understand and think differently about what we do and who this new learner is. And that subject of the new learner is something I'm going to return to a little bit later in my discussion today. Another factor in my choice of subject was a general concern with humanities and humanities education. As we know here at Stanford, as well as at greater colleges and universities across the nation, education in humanities is suffering with declining numbers. Fewer students major or take humanities courses. Students come into college more than ever vocationally driven, with business being the largest